In this video, I wanted to take the time to share some of my thoughts on nutrition in a structured manner, because there's an incredible amount of confusion around nutritional science. Thanks to the influence of governments, influential food and agricultural companies, politics, personal biases, and many more variables, this field is certainly well studied, but not well understood. A search for the perfect human diet has failed. Bio-individuality comes out on top. Different humans have different needs, who would have thought? Standardized diets and fast foods have made humanity the sickest it has ever been, with more than a quarter of humanity being overweight. Disease and autoimmune issues are on an all-time high. Profit-driven megacorporations are exporting these principles around the world, and every nation that begins to adopt these modern ways of eating follows the same trajectory. Our relentless approach to optimize agricultural growth has devastated soil health and brought many species to extinction. The food we eat is intimately connected to our health and the health of our planet. So where does that leave me? What gives food these healing properties that are not contained in a kind of soda, for example? And how can I identify which one is going to help me and which one is not? At the end of the day, it comes down to one thing: quality. The quality of your food you eat will be the greatest determinator of your health and your weight. And quality arises from diversity. Let me explain. There are different perspectives we can take to look at our nutrition. The first and grossest perspective is a macro point of view. So foods can be separated into proteins, fats and carbohydrates. Proteins can be disassembled into amino acids, which serve as building blocks for hormones, neurotransmitters, parts of the cell membrane, enzymes and so forth. They are what enables our body to communicate and build. Fats can be used as building material to embed these proteins into so complex structures like the brain can arise. It can also be used as a fuel, and it's a precursor for a lot of hormones. Carbohydrates can be used for energy production at this layer. None of these three macronutrients are good or bad. They're simply like words in a song. Words can be great, or they can teach hate, or even worse, they can degrade. Either way, they're necessary, but some of these essential building blocks just allow for a better foundation. Not all proteins, fats or carbohydrates are equal. Let's take this one step further to better understand. The next common perspective in nutrition is the world of micronutrients. This includes mainly minerals and vitamins, and suddenly there are a lot more variables to look at. They are used like a currency to help all the different functions in the human body running. Deficiencies can lead to serious malfunctioning and issues down the line. Nutrients and vitamins are cofactors because they cooperate with gene activity. Without them, our cells are not able to replicate or produce any new proteins. There are tons of different forms of these, and they're all interconnected. The study of minerals, for example, shows this pretty well. Being deficient in one mineral will lead to deficiencies in other minerals if the root cause is not fixed. But let's take this another step further. I think you will begin to understand where I'm going with this. Because we can not only look at smaller parts, but also its interactions with other small parts. An example for this is one of the most promising emerging fields of study, the human biome. A complex web of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, viruses and yeast that live inside as well as outside of us. This takes a whole other leap of complexity. Mapping the different strains of organisms is near impossible, especially because they do not function as a separate unit, but as a connected whole. To give you an idea, some gut bacteria can ferment certain carbohydrates and produce short-chain fatty acids, which can be used by certain cells in the gut to keep the lining intact. They can also produce neurotransmitters like serotonin. They take over the majority of functions of our immune system. Just the bacterial DNA outnumbers the human DNA. And even things like plant mRNA has been shown to change the genetic expression of these bacteria. This becomes especially interesting because the same diversity that we find in our gut can be found on our skin, or in a healthy soil, or on a fresh piece of carrot that we've just pulled out of the ground. And that is a good thing. The more diverse the biome, the more resilient it is to stresses like pathological viruses, for example. The more diverse life on our food is, the more resilient and healthy will be that food, and the better off you will be eating that food, because it increases the diversity of the organism that you call you. And just to complete this journey, I want to take it one last step further, because all of this can also be viewed from a quantum or energetic perspective, and that literally adds another quantum leap in complexity to it. It shows how each and every particle is influenced by every other particle anywhere at any time. The interesting part about this is that we can see all of this in every food we have, just to different degrees. But every food contains proteins, fats and carbohydrates. And every food contains minerals and vitamins. And every food is built from even smaller parts that are at a certain point indistinguishable from the environment. We literally eat the environment and all the diversity it inhabits from every bite of food we eat. The higher the degree of that diversity, the higher the quality of our food will be. So why am I telling you all this? I wanted to make an example on how infinitely complex just food can be. Every reductionistic approach to unravel this complexity has failed. It is the diversity itself that balances itself out. The more I begin to remove variables, the harder it becomes to balance, and undesirable changes happen a lot more quickly. An example of this is the use of pesticides or herbicides and antibiotics in commodity crops like wheat or corn. It kills the diversity of all of the microorganisms that make that crop and its environment stable. And that in turn makes the crop more and more reliable on uses of fertilizers and even more poisons, while in turn losing the complexity of vitamins and minerals as well as proteins and fats. And after some processing we are left with only sugar and some harmful proteins. Because an infinite web of complexity has been stripped away that would have balanced this entire process out. So, long story short, if you want to increase the quality of your food, ask yourself what the source of that food is. Where did it come from? And how diverse was the environment of that? Is that piece of meat in front of you from a factory with an animal that was fed with wheat and soy and antibiotics? Wheat and soy that was grown in a monoculture, sprayed with pesticides and herbicides, genetically modified, designed in a sterile lab? Well, where's the diversity in that? Or was it a piece of meat from an animal that spent its entire life outside in the sun, eating grass and other wild herbs that just happened to grow in that environment, fresh air and water, as well as other animals? And remember that each and every single one of these parts have a near infinite complexity as well. So, which one has more diversity? Which one of us is of higher quality? Which one is better for the environment and which one is better for your health? I mean, really, this should not even be a question we have to ask ourselves. If you want to eat healthy, don't begin by following any diet, like going low carb or vegan or whatever. Try to improve the quality of whatever it is you're eating first, right? Start from the bottom, the most complex web, and then you can start to work yourself up to the grossest point of view, the modification of macronutrients, for example. Of course, at the end of the day, this has to overlap with your individual range of compatibilities to food. But the higher the quality of the food you have, the higher the probability of compatibility. Alright, I really hope you found some value in this point of view. If there is still some confusion, please let me know, and I will be very happy to answer them and go into some deeper discussions, because this topic could be expanded in like hour-long conversations. So I will see you on the other side.